Hi, I'm Russ Hunter. I represent the 48th Legislative District, parts of Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, the Points communities, and a teeny little bit of Issaquah, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
So next week is a pretty big week for you. You're rolling out the House budget proposal for 2011-13. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing this week to prepare for that?
Well, I got a new job this year. I'm the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and I'm, I guess, pleased that my caucus felt fit to elect me to do this job in what's a pretty terrible budget year. So our schedule calls for us to roll out a budget next week. We wait for two pretty critical forecasts in order to do that. We get a new revenue forecast on Thursday of this week, and just last week, we got what's called a caseload forecast, where we predict how many kids are going to arrive in K-12, what's our healthcare utilization rate in Medicaid, and costs. Last week, we got pretty good news on the cost front. Our utilization of some healthcare services was down, and we actually saved a little bit of money moving out into the next biennium. We're a little worried about the revenue forecast. Predictions are all over the map. They'll probably be out by the time you see this, but right now we're expecting anywhere from a decline of about $500 million to maybe as much as $1.5 billion. Our current problem, once you get rid of planned expansions and things, planned salary increases, for example, that we're not doing, our problem looks like about $3.5 billion today, so it could go as high as $5 billion. If you went to the high end of that. This is a pretty big problem to resolve in about a $32 billion budget. So we have some concern about the level of cuts that we have to do.
So what is your approach then in dealing with such a big budget hole? Are there certain priorities that you're putting first, or what's the process for that?
Well, what you try and do in a budget is you try and have the budget reflect both your values in terms of what you want to fund, but also your values about fiduciary responsibility. Our job as budget writers is to produce a budget that's as sustainable as possible, so we understand what, say, the next decade of expenses look like loosely. A couple years ago, no one could have predicted the downturn we're in now, or if they did, they shorted the market and they're rich and they're living in the Bahamas. So if you have friends that predicted this and they're not living in the Bahamas, they didn't predict it. So we have to do reasonable projections and try and make sure that our pension expenses, our healthcare expenses don't grow uncontrollably in the out years, and that we get to spend money on the things that we think are really important. Our basic education expenses, so that we do as good a job as possible educating kids here in Washington, is a core value for me and for many of the other legislators in this chamber.
So what's the plan then for next week?
Well, the plan next week is we'll respond to the revenue forecast on Thursday of this week. Over the weekend, we'll make the final adjustments to the plan that we have in place today, and we would hope to roll it out on Tuesday of next week. If we get a very large budget surprise on Thursday, we probably won't roll it out until we're reasonably comfortable that we have the votes for whatever plan that we're doing. So it's a little fluid. Our hope is to roll it out early in the week and hopefully vote for it by the end of the week.
Great. So I guess we'll be hearing from you next week with more specifics.
Oh, I think you'll see me on the TV lots next week.
All right.